Building in public is becoming a popular way to build a business. But how about consulting in public? Can entrepreneurs go beyond talking about their businesses? Can they conduct their business out in the open? Well, Rand Fishkin recently asked Patrick Campbell, who just sold Profitwell for a lot of $1 million, to help him with their pricing. And immediately, people wanted to listen in on that high-profile conversation and asked the two founders to work it out in public. And similarly, I talked to Louis Nichols of Sparkloop not long ago to set up the rewards for my newsletter referral system, and we decided to publish this conversation as part of Louis's podcast, Send and Grow, that I highly recommend, by the way. And it was an onboarding conversation turned into a podcast episode. And I shared my business needs, and Louis shared his comments and insights and suggestions, and we ended up with a solid set of newsletter referral rewards for me. And the process of how we came to select them is now in the public record forever. Louis got to show how much he knows about newsletter growth, and I had a chance to talk about why I write, what I write, and who I write for. And consultants have been doing public expertise demonstrations like this for a long time. Free webinars, they're top of the funnel lead generation tactic that's very common. But they're usually using non-specific and blinded examples with the intent to obfuscate the client's identity. What I want to talk about here today is the opposite of that. A public consulting session with clear buy-in from and collaboration with a client. Consulting in public exposes the consultant's expertise while giving the client reach and community awareness, painting them as a public educator in the industry while they learn something. And consulting in public looks like an incredibly attractive way to share expertise and build a reputation as an expert. But is it safe? Does it actually convert? And do the benefits outweigh the risks? I believe they do, but only under a certain set of conditions. It's not a free-for-all. So let's talk about risks and how to mitigate them. For people who struggle to make ends meet, doing work for free in the hope of getting exposure is incredibly dangerous, and it doesn't help. Consulting in public tends to be an unpaid activity because the act of publishing a conversation usually benefits everyone involved equally. Paid consulting is about exclusive access, and when exclusivity vanishes, so does compensation. What both parties pay with is their reputation. The consultant risks inviting criticism of their skill, as it's very easy to dissect the public conversation, while the client has affiliation risk, as customers get to see what businesses the client partners with and how they think about their customers when they talk about them. And from what I have seen, that leads to a reputationally balanced lineup. High-profile founders talk to high-profile consultants, and indie hackers talk to indie service owners. I've yet to find a highly skewed consulting session made public. It usually happens between people on the same level and almost exclusively between entrepreneurs with a prior existing relationship. Because without trust, there's no consulting in public. And that leads us to the second part of this risk calculation, protecting company secrets, probably the biggest issue that people might have with this. Every potential client will have to ask themselves, if I talk to someone about my business, can I trust them to navigate the conversation around sensitive topics while still fully addressing my needs? Can I get the most out of it, but not spill my secrets? And consulting generally requires high trust levels. Internal numbers and strategies are commonly shared during these sessions. And if you know that what you say might be published, you might censor yourself, both as the client and the consultant. And some actors in the podcasting space, they have a reputation for coercing their guests into publicly talking about company internals that they're legally prohibited from discussing. And they make people wary of talking to publicly exposed figures in the first place, and it certainly makes it less appealing to become a public consulting client for them. While there's always the option of editing out the details or dropping the recording entirely after the fact, the risks are present when somebody has recorded something that shouldn't have been recorded. And that's why it's essential to trust the consultant. If they're more interested in elevating their own reputation than protecting their clients' secrets, everybody has a problem. And mitigating these risks boils down to having rules about what both parties will and won't be able to discuss, and these points need to be exchanged in advance, and it needs to be very clear. The success of such a conversation then is quickly hindered by legal requirements of businesses and business processes, which make consulting in public almost impossible for larger enterprise customers with all these non-disclosure agreements and legal barriers around. Unless you do it like Patrick Campbell and ask the CEO directly. Then you might have a shot. But you don't need to do hour-long sessions to consult in public. Josh Spector suggests doing some micro-coaching. offering free advice about specific challenges that your followers may have, and then engaging heavily in the replies. That way, it's still public consulting without the high-risk components. But we can still talk about the upsides here, because you combine the reputational risk and the risk of exposing business secrets. That just leads me to believe that extensive and podcast-worthy consulting in public is most effective between founders with a pre-existing relationship and when it's being used for built in public purposes, when there's something to be learned. And that's a very narrow niche. But just in case you find yourself in that very situation on either side, here are a few upsides that might convince you to give it a go. Consulting in public signals professionalism. If a consultant conducts a consulting session and gets their client to appreciate their work audibly, well, the listeners and the viewers, they will have witnessed a professional service being rendered. Not only will this net the consultant more work in the future, but it will continue to build both parties' reputations as serious entrepreneurs. Consulting in public also signals expertise because everyone wants to learn from experts and people consider those they learn from to be experts. So by putting your work out there, you're creating evidence of your expertise by teaching. And this goes for the consultant and for the client, who are both subject matter experts at their crafts. Consulting in public also allows for brand building. While both parties benefit from reputation and expertise signals, they also actively teach the people listening. And consulting done right is extremely powerful. Getting a glimpse into the inner workings of a business, now that's equally attractive. And being liberal with this information is a strong indicator of both parties' willingness to contribute to the knowledge production inside their community. So consulting in public definitely is a great marketing move. The folks at Ecom Crew have a podcast segment called Under the Hood, where they offer free consulting sessions that get turned into podcast episodes, and they're wildly popular. And there are a few low-risk jump-off points if you want to try out consulting in public. You can offer free discovery sessions that get recorded, like the Ecom Crew guys. Recording something doesn't mean releasing it necessarily. You can always discard those takes that didn't work out, but when there is chemistry between you and your client, the resulting recording can create an incredibly strong pull towards your consulting business because people want that too. And whenever you get on a quick call with someone, ask to record it. If they agree, this can be a great micro-consulting opportunity, and you won't risk divulging too much information because the problem is usually well scoped, and it's not too formal of a call, so it feels very friendly. And this is best done with clients that already have built a lot of trust with you and clearly opt in and have something to gain from talking about their issues in public. Finally, there is a personal growth angle to all of this. It takes courage to consult in public. It's like asking someone out on a date, but for business, and in front of potentially thousands of fellow professionals. That's a lot of pressure, but it's worth it. You can create this permanent record of your ability. It will turn into public evidence of your skill, your ambition, your tenacity, and the impact that you can have on someone else's business. It's going to be right there, quite visible. As long as it's beneficial to the consultant and the client, consulting in public is a great idea.